Hello, hello, hello. You are once again listening to the Exit Light podcast. This is episode 10, and my name is Eli Beals. I will be your storyteller today. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions or whatnot, feel free to leave those in the comments section on my channel. I'll try and get back to it. I'm not very good at correspondence via social media or any correspondence at all, really. I'm pretty bad about it. But if you do like these stories, you can find them in my book called The Exit Light, a collection of the perturbing sort. You may also see another book written by me called Soulbound. When asked, I simply tell people it's a vampire love story, and they get a weird look on their face and probably never read it. However, if they do, they find out that I was lying or not telling the whole truth. The reason why I even mention this is because I'm working on a follow-up to that vampire love story. No, but seriously, there's a lot more going on than that. And I can't even say that they're vampires exactly. It's just the closest thing I can think of to describe what it is. So, yeah. This story is not a vampire love story. It is about video games, and big surprise there. I tend to write about those a lot, mainly because video games is a large part of my life. For, I want to say, more than 2/3 of my life I've been playing them. Since I was tall enough to reach the joystick, I was playing them and loving them, enjoying just the escapism, the sense of adventure, or whatever. I just love them, and I like to write about them, so yeah, you're gonna hear it a lot from me. So this one's about sort of a mobile game, which I'm not a huge fan of. Even though I worked for a number of years in the mobile games business, these kinds of games I feel are manipulative and utilize some pretty malicious tactics to extract money from their customers. Although I think it's really mellowed out since the height of the mobile games boom, but still kind of nobody likes paywalls. Nobody likes gatekeeping. Nobody likes that kind of stuff. They feel like they're being extorted to progress and play their game, which is not full-featured unless you shell out the dough. Not cool, guys. Made a lot of people very rich, but made a lot of people very poor, too. User beware. Caveat emptor. Well, this game, as you can tell, there's a certain level of animosity already laid down for this type of thing, and maybe I take it another step further in the story called My Farm, and I'm gonna stop rambling now. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye. My Farm, written and narrated by Eli Beals. Whoever thought growing vegetables and milking cows would be a popular trend in gaming that would spread like wildfire must have been a genius. I grew up playing video games, and usually there was some kind of simple objective involved. Slay the dragon, rescue the princess, defeat the Nazis, that kind of stuff. I guess it all depended on the demographic, but I can say without having to do much or any research that most gamers were male, and not generally imbued with an abundance of disposable income.
And like heat-seeking missiles, these games were launched at an untapped market that had yet to become enthralled by video games, but had spending power. And that would send off a frenzy of production of this kind of game. This demographic, of course, was the stay-at-home mom or dad, or anybody with an abundance of free time. It didn't really matter which game you picked, whether it had Vil, Life, Story, or some other surname attached. They were all pretty much the same. Despite their innocent veneers, some serious psychology was being used to manipulate and extract time and money from their customers. I can say without question that in some cases they have even been the catalyst for financial ruin, or worse, for many people. Was it the intent of the developers to do this to people? Or were they just turning a blind eye to addiction-forming algorithms? I guess you could say I was firmly against this trend, but eventually the combination of curiosity and boredom would win, and so I thought I'd give it a go. The game I finally landed on was called My Farm. It didn't look like other mobile farm sims out there, with their bright colors and overall cheerful tones. The developer was not familiar to me either, and it wasn't part of some huge mobile game conglomerate notorious for churning out reskins of the same games, just with different art assets, all outsourced to far-flung corners of the world to increase profitability. There seemed to be a level of detail not present with all of its clones and lookalikes. For one thing, the protagonist, Farmer, did not look exactly overjoyed at their choice of vocation. In fact, he looked grim, exhausted, even slightly bemused at the viewer's casual approach to the noble art of farming, as if in challenge to the player. To me, this is how I imagined a real farmer to look like, so I tapped download and installed it. A minute and a half later, I was introduced to my new farm. It was a bleak and withered place. It was pretty clear I had a lot of work to do, and over the course of a few weeks, I had put my farm firmly into a nearly hourly spot of my routine. I would spend an hour or so after work just tapping and swiping until at last my farm was starting to look presentable. Most mobile games are designed to shower a new user with rewards, to establish a sense of accomplishment at a certain rate. At some point, it pulls that away real quick, offering ways to progress by spending your hard-earned dollars. But my farm was almost punishing without any sense of immediate progress. The thing that kept me going was this distinct sense that there was something that was broken, and I could, with time, fix it. Sort of an odd parallel with real life, and with so much I was personally unable to fix, this provided me with that feeling of usefulness and validity. For a long time, I was just waiting for things to happen. The next phase or level was so far away. My level 2 pumpkin patch got to level 3 in just an hour, but level 4 could conceivably take days. I realized that these spans of waiting would only grow larger, and that wonderful feeling of reaching that new plateau would be denied even longer. Like any addiction, this forces the user into a place where they have to decide what is more important, their time or their money. I resisted, of course. I knew how this thing worked. And so I just checked in on my farm from time to time. I had a decent crop of potatoes lined up for harvest, and from the sale of those I could buy corn seed, and then from that I could get chickens and so on. There was a leaderboard, and I noticed how far some of the other players had progressed, and was astonished to see that this game offered real-life rewards for various completions. The top player would win a $5,000 cash prize after the contest ended. Following that were less prestigious consolations, things like t-shirts and in-game boosts. It had that same appeal that the ticket redemption store at a Boardwalk arcade has. You know, some of the prizes were incredible, but usually you just end up leaving with a rainbow slinky or tiny plush animals. The next weekend, all I did was play my farm and made sure to harvest the crops the very second they were ready, and to plant and expand my little farm into a vast complex assembly line of production, checking the leaderboard every now and again to see where I ranked up. And sure enough, my game tag was climbing. When I slept, I dreamt of little animated sheep bleating and munching on their designated patches of grass, of the wonderful sound of coins tinkling as I turned in a batch of goods. My game tag was hovering around 50th place or so. I didn't stand a chance at the top prize, but I looked forward to the rewards I could win nonetheless. Currently, if my place held, I would be awarded some in-game bonus fertilizer that would double the speed at which my crops grew. Corn was pretty fast, but it took up lots of space. Same with wheat and grapes. The following weekend, I was dismayed to see the game was not available due to an update. Particularly upsetting because I had a massive crop to harvest, and felt this would push me into the next prize bracket. I checked back intermittently over the day as I did things around my apartment, real-life maintenance like dishes and laundry, and later in the afternoon, I noticed the app icon had changed, and there was a minimal download upon loading, and it was up again. I harvested several bushels of potatoes and tomatoes, selling them off, pleased to see my ranking go up a bit. After the perfunctory replanting and meager expansion with my earnings, I noticed a new tab on the top menu bar. It was a strange symbol or rune of some kind, two intersecting lines, one slightly longer than the other, crossed at one end with a curve like a sideways smile emoji. Tapping it brought up a dialog box that had an offer with a shadowy looking NPC that was offering me a trade. It read, "Offer to me your vitality for a huge boost." I tapped the interested button in curiosity. A dial appeared that allowed me to set a number between 1 and 50 years. I selected 5 and hit proceed. The same shadowy NPC appeared and asked in text bubble form, but I swear there was a voice in my head speaking as I read it. "Are you sure?" I selected yes, and was prompted to place my thumb on the screen. The strangest sensation gripped me, like I was being mildly electrocuted. I yelped in surprise, as a force like magnetism kept my thumb attached to the screen for a while, and though I did not try, I knew that if I let go of my phone, it would be firmly attached to me like a lamprey. The strange gripping sensation ceased, and a new screen appeared with a thank you message and confirmation of the transaction. Upon returning to my farm screen, I noticed that it had been infused with Supergrow fertilizer that not only tripled its rate, but also doubled its yield when harvesting. Holy crap, I thought, and proceeded to grind at a new and intense pace. Since the rate was so much faster, I was planting and harvesting every 20 minutes instead of an hour, so basically constantly farming. I think when the sun glared through my kitchen window that I realized I had been grinding my farm all night and through the early morning. With that realization, I yawned and proceeded to the bathroom to brush my teeth before crashing into bed. Had I been playing that long? I squeezed out some toothpaste onto my brush and looked at myself in the mirror and paused. I looked older. My eyes seemed deeper set and the muscles in my face leaner somehow. As I began to brush, I noticed minute crow's feet as I winced and decided that it was just due to staying up all night playing a mobile game. I slept for about 5 hours, and upon waking, I immediately launched my farm. My bonus was still active and had a few more hours left to benefit from the boost. The boost had propelled me into 15th place. I couldn't believe it. With 4 days left of the contest, it was looking like I could possibly win this thing. Once my bonus was up, the frantic pace I was playing lulled, and I checked my standing again. I was in 5th place. I could really use $5,000. Even though I was gainfully employed, it wasn't exactly a life of luxury. I still had debts to consider, and I've always wanted to travel to Europe, see the Alps, bicycle through the English countryside. This was an opportunity within reach for me, and all it would take was some serious hours on the farm. I called out sick the next day, and wasn't met with any doubt, as it was something I rarely did. I was playing unboosted and saw my ranking fall. From 5th place I had fallen to 25th, and even though I was growing the highest value crops at a steady rate, it seemed others had taken advantage of the boost feature and were just blowing by me. Perhaps it was a sense of competition, or the fact that I had already put so much into this that what could it hurt to boost again? Given the feature was weird and probably designed that way to seem ominous, but a mobile app couldn't suck life from you. That was impossible. Yet my thumb hovered in uncertainty over the confirmation button after I had scrolled the dial to 15 this time. However unlikely it was, the fear that I was in fact trading my life for this game played on my thoughts like whispers in the dark. I shook the idea off like an old superstition and gave the developer a grudging kudos to this incredible mind game they've constructed. But this time the sensation was not mild. It was as if tiny shards of the screen had dug into my flesh like electrocuting hooks, pulling at my entire nervous system, causing me to spasm and go completely rigid like a statue. Fear flooded my mind then, banishing my skepticism and doubt that such a thing could happen. I was being drained of my life, as if I had sliced open an artery and my blood was being pulled in great gulps into this device. That voice again of the shadowy NPC just laughed quietly in the back of my thoughts. I don't know how long this lasted, but when it was over and I was able to move again, I saw that I had a massive boost to my farm's productive capabilities. A mixture of dread and elation washed over me. Surely this would give me the edge I needed to win the contest, so I farmed. My ranking climbed quickly as I played and was encroaching on the leader. By this time I had become familiar with the other players, as they were the ones standing in the way of my victory. The one in the lead was named MacDonald, followed by X-Devilboy X, followed by American Gothic, and then myself, Swifty. I played till my bonus was spent, rarely checking the leaderboard because it took time away from the game, and when I saw it I laughed in utter shock. I was in first place. MacDonald wasn't even in the top 20, neither was X-Devilboy X, but American Gothic was hot on my heels. Since I was back to regular speed, I tried to find my competitors who had given me such fierce competition. They were simply not there anymore, as if they had pulled out and deleted their accounts. I had about 30 minutes before I had something to harvest, and so I went to the bathroom to pee and maybe splash some water on my face. For a second, I didn't know who I was looking at in the mirror. It looked like my dad. The hair was graying, face was haggard, blemishes on the cheeks and worry lines on the forehead were apparent. I moved back and forth, and so did my reflection. I was looking at myself, and my expression soured to abject horror as I realized what I had done. This was real. I had actually traded my youth for virtual vegetables and potential dollars. When I began playing my farm, I was 24 years old. I now appeared to be in my mid-50s. I reached out with a trembling hand to my face in the mirror, the gravity of what I had done evident upon my wide, terror-filled eyes, and I began to cry. I knew then what had happened to MacDonald and ex-Devil Boy X, and why they were simply off the leaderboard. They had bargained for more life than they had left, and were probably dead. Dead or so old now that they could no longer play my farm. The game had become something more than just a waste of time, more than a contest. It was the most important thing in my life. I had to win, I realized. American Gothic was close behind me, and I didn't know what lengths they would go to beat me. I was determined to keep my lead at any cost, but also keeping in mind that this had become a game of life and death. $5,000 didn't seem like such a fabulous prize at this point, but I was clinging to some hope that if I prevailed, that maybe what had been inflicted on me would be rescinded if I won. However, I was not going to be flippant about my usage of any boosts from here on out. Hell, I'm in my 50s now, I thought. Not much time left to wager. Hopefully this American Gothic wasn't like a kid or something. Then I would be certain to lose. Carrots, potatoes, onions, wheat, zucchini, pumpkins, and watermelons all found their way to their various stages of seeding, growth, and eventual ripeness, ready to sell off. I tapped on them to harvest as soon as they were ready and maintained my lead until my lone opponent suddenly lurched ahead. That's when I noticed a notification on the home screen. It was another symbol. I pressed it and was shown a graphic of a hand with dialogue boxes on the digits, one on each finger and thumb and wrist. Next to each dialogue box was a multiplier, X2 for the pinky, X5 for the other fingers, and X15 for the thumb, and for the wrist, it was X30. My heart sank, knowing what this suggested, and even despite having aged beyond my years, I still lacked the wisdom to just stop right there, and more than that, I was curious. I needed to know what would happen if I went forward with this. So I pressed the pinky and hit the confirmation button. The app then launched my camera function and a target box appeared that said snap a photo of your selection. I exhaled and aimed the camera at my outstretched left hand. As soon as my pinky was within the box frame, the camera flashed brightly and a quick sudden jolt of pressure pinched at my pinky. On my phone was a cartoonish severed finger lying atop a glowing rune that pixelated and vanished. The message, "Sacrifice accepted," appeared. I almost didn't want to look, but I couldn't resist. My hand, still outstretched, was missing its smallest digit. It was as if I had never had a finger there to begin with. Just a smooth patch of scar tissue over the knuckle. I sighed, and was strangely giddy, and began to laugh. Perhaps I was in shock. Perhaps this was the most amazing thing I had ever witnessed. I don't know. It was like being drunk, unable to comprehend any sense of danger or even fear. I felt nothing but childish delight at this. The boost this gave me was not that great, and my competition was still gaining on me. But if I stayed focused and kept my timing right, I could win. There were 30 minutes left to go until the finish line. I had sacrificed another finger during this time despite my resolution not to, but my opponent had gotten way too close for comfort, so another finger had to go. At this point, I simply didn't care. All I wanted in life was to win this damn contest, and the counter was down to 10 seconds. My screen went black and was vibrating, emitting a chime. It was a phone call. My mind struggled with the realization that this was in fact a phone, first and foremost, and that calls were invariably going to happen. It was my work, and I pressed decline. More infuriating than the interruption was that the call caused my farm to close. I relaunched the app, and during the loading screen, my phone received another call. Work again. I was furious. I answered it, yelling at whoever it was. They stammered, unprepared for the sheer menace in my voice, and asked if I was feeling okay. I hissed that I was not okay, and would they please stop calling me, and then I hung up. Again, I launched the app, holding my breath as the status bar crept across the screen. When the title screen appeared, a message box popped up. Hello, My Farm players. Thank you for your patience as our servers have been down over the past couple of weeks, and as such the game has been offline. Please accept these tokens that you can exchange in-game for farm upgrades, avatars, and more. There was no mention of a contest, or for that matter, any winners. I sat in stunned silence, staring dumbly at the friendly message. I browsed the various menus in a vain attempt to find any evidence to my gaming history the past week. There was nothing. The tabs bearing those strange symbols were not there, just social media links and advertisements for the company's other games. A knock broke my stupor, and I went to the door, peered through the peephole. There was a courier in a bright yellow shirt. He had me sign for a small package that had my name and address printed on it, but nothing else. When I opened it up, there was a large stack of money and a note card that simply read, "Congratulations, first place winner. Check back soon for more contests." I decided right then and there that I would not be doing so. In fact, I never played another casual mobile game again. I've posted this story on a few message boards, looking for anyone who has played that particular version of My Farm, but so far, nobody has replied.